Between 2008 and 2024, 7 teenage girls in America committed murders so brutal that judges looked at these young faces and decided they deserved to spend the rest of their lives behind bars. Welcome to Savage Case Files, where we expose the most shocking betrayals of innocence and examine the darkest crimes that shatter our assumptions about youth and gender. I'm your host, and today we're confronting one of the most disturbing trends in American criminal history. Today, we're revealing the complete stories of America's most evil teenage girl killers, 7 cases that forced the justice system to confront whether age and gender should ever excuse the ultimate betrayal of human life. From Kristen Pittman, who murdered her grandparents at just 12 years old, to Krista Pike, who became the youngest woman on death row for torturing a classmate to death. While male teenagers dominate violent crime statistics, these 7 girls proved that evil knows no gender boundaries, committing murders that rivaled the most brutal adult killers. They destroyed families, ended innocent lives, and shattered communities with acts of violence so extreme that even seasoned prosecutors struggled to comprehend how children could commit such horrors. These weren't crimes of passion or teenage rebellion gone wrong. These were acts of premeditated murder, family annihilation, and sadistic torture that revealed a darkness most people refuse to believe exists in young girls. A 14-year-old who executed her own mother. A 15-year-old who killed a child just to experience what murder felt like. An 18-year-old who kept pieces of her victim's skull as trophies. The courts faced unprecedented decisions. How do you sentence a 12-year-old to decades in prison? Can a teenage girl truly be irredeemable? Should youth and gender provide protection from life sentences? Or do some crimes transcend all considerations of age and sex? 7 young killers. 7 life sentences. 7 cases that destroyed the myth that teenage girls can't be as dangerous as their male counterparts. We'll examine each case chronologically, revealing the crimes that shocked America and the legal battles that followed. Subscribe now because these stories will challenge everything you think you know about teenage violence and female criminality. Case 1. Kristen Pittman. The youngest killer on our list shattered every assumption about childhood innocence when Kristen Pittman committed double murder at an age when most children are worried about middle school homework and code playground drama. In 2005, 12-year-old Kristen Pittman was living with her grandparents in Chester County, South Carolina. Her parents had lost custody, and her elderly grandparents had stepped in to provide the stability and care that Kristen desperately needed. They had no idea they were harboring a killer in their home. The Pittmans were respected members of their community, hard-working, church-going people who had already raised their own children and were now sacrificing their golden years to raise their troubled granddaughter. They believed love and discipline could turn Kristen's life around. They were tragically wrong. On the night that would make criminal history, Kristen Pittman made a decision that defied comprehension. While her grandparents slept peacefully in their beds, trusting in the safety of their own home, their 12-year-old granddaughter crept through the house with murder on her mind. Pittman didn't just kill her grandparents, she executed them. The elderly couple who had opened their home and hearts to her became victims of a violence so extreme that investigators initially refused to believe a 6th grader could be responsible. The crime scene revealed a level of brutality that seasoned detectives associated with adult killers, not children. The investigation that followed shocked South Carolina law enforcement. How do you interrogate a 12-year-old suspected of double murder? How do you process evidence when your primary suspect should be in elementary school? The case challenged every protocol and assumption about juvenile crime. When confronted with the evidence, Pittman's facade crumbled. The sweet-faced child who had fooled teachers, social workers, and family members revealed the cold-blooded killer beneath. Her confession sent shockwaves through the legal system and forced prosecutors to confront an unprecedented question. How do you charge a 12-year-old with capital murder? The court sentenced Kristen Pittman to 30 years in prison, later reduced to 25 years, making her one of the youngest girls ever sentenced to such a lengthy term. She had transformed from a troubled child into America's youngest female killer, proving that evil can lurk behind the most innocent faces. Case 2, Ashley Jones. At 14 years old, Ashley Jones became one of the youngest family annihilators in American history when she participated in the brutal murder of her own grandparents in Alabama. Her case proved that teenage girls could be just as capable of family destruction as their male counterparts. Jones was living with her grandparents, who had taken her in when her parents couldn't provide proper care. Like many grandparents thrust into the role of raising troubled teenagers, they struggled to balance love with discipline, hoping to guide Ashley toward a better future. They had no idea their granddaughter was planning their deaths. The catalyst for murder came in the form of Ashley's older boyfriend, who became her partner in the deadly plot against her family. The relationship between the teenage girl and her older companion created a toxic dynamic that would ultimately cost 2 innocent lives. Together, they hatched a plan to eliminate the elderly couple who stood between them and whatever twisted future they envisioned. On the night of the murders, Ashley Jones betrayed the ultimate trust. Her grandparents, who had opened their home and hearts to her, became victims of a violence so extreme that it shocked even hardened Alabama prosecutors. The elderly couple, who should have been safe in their own home, were instead brutally murdered by the granddaughter they had tried to save. The double homicide wasn't a crime of passion or a moment of teenage rebellion gone wrong. Evidence revealed that Jones and her boyfriend had planned the murders, discussing how to eliminate her grandparents and what they would do afterward. The premeditated nature of the crime made it particularly heinous in the eyes of the law. When police arrested the teenage couple, they uncovered a partnership in murder that defied comprehension. How could a 14-year-old girl participate in the brutal killing of her own family members? The investigation revealed a level of callousness that prosecutors argued transcended any consideration of Jones's youth. Alabama courts showed no mercy for the teenage family killer. Ashley Jones was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, making her one of the youngest girls ever condemned to die behind bars. The state had decided that some betrayals of family trust are so fundamental that age becomes irrelevant to punishment. Jones had destroyed her own family and sealed her fate with a single night of unforgivable violence. Case 3. Alyssa Bustamante. In 2009, 15-year-old Alyssa Bustamante committed one of the most chilling murders in American history, killing a 9-year-old child simply because she wanted to experience what it felt like to take a human life. Her case revealed a level of calculated evil that prosecutors had never encountered in such a young defendant. Bustamante was living with her grandmother in St. Martin's, Missouri, after her parents proved unable to care for her. On the surface, she appeared to be a typical troubled teenager, dealing with depression, cutting herself, and posting dark content on social media. But beneath this facade lurked something far more dangerous: a fascination with death that would soon turn deadly. Her social media posts provided disturbing glimpses into her mindset. Bustamante wrote about wanting to hurt people and expressed curiosity about murder. These weren't typical teenage angst posts. They were the digital breadcrumbs of a future killer, documenting her descent into homicidal fantasy. On October 21, 2009, Bustamante's fantasies became reality when she lured 9-year-old Elizabeth Olton into the woods near their homes. Elizabeth was the younger sister of Bustamante's friend, an innocent child who trusted the older teenager and followed her into a trap that would cost her life. What happened next defied comprehension. Bustamante didn't kill Elizabeth in a moment of rage or panic. Instead, she strangled and stabbed the child to death in a premeditated act of murder designed solely to satisfy her curiosity about killing. The 9-year-old's final moments were spent in terror at the hands of a teenager who saw her as nothing more than an experiment. After the murder, Bustamante returned home and wrote in her diary about the experience. Her entry was chilling in its casual tone. She described killing Elizabeth as pretty enjoyable and expressed satisfaction at finally knowing what it felt like to take a life. The diary entry became crucial evidence that revealed the true nature of her crime. When Elizabeth was reported missing, a massive search effort began. Hundreds of volunteers combed the Missouri countryside looking for the missing child, while Bustamante participated in the search, knowing exactly where the body was hidden because she had put it there. The discovery of Elizabeth's body and Bustamante's subsequent confession shocked Missouri. The teenager who had helped search for the victim was revealed as her killer, transforming a missing child case into one of the most disturbing murders in state history. Case 4. Krista Pike. Krista Pike's name became synonymous with evil when she committed one of the most brutal torture murders in Tennessee history at just 18 years old. Her case didn't just shock the nation, it made her the youngest woman sentenced to death in modern America, a distinction she holds to this day. Pike was enrolled in a Job Corps program in Knoxville, Tennessee, designed to help at-risk youth develop job skills and turn their lives around. Instead, the program became the setting for one of the most horrific crimes ever committed by a teenage girl. Pike's troubled background and fascination with occult practices had created a dangerous combination that would soon explode into violence. The victim was 19-year-old Colleen Slemmer, a fellow Job Corps student who had the misfortune of becoming the target of Pike's jealousy and rage. Pike believed that Slemmer was trying to steal her boyfriend, and this perceived romantic rivalry would cost Slemmer her life in the most brutal way possible. On January 12, 1995, Pike lured Slemmer to a secluded area on the University of Tennessee campus under the pretense of making peace. Instead, Pike and her accomplices subjected Slemmer to prolonged torture that lasted for hours. The attack wasn't a moment of rage. It was a sustained campaign of sadistic violence that revealed Pike's complete lack of humanity. The torture included beating, cutting, and burning Slemmer while she was still alive and conscious. Pike didn't just want to kill her victim, she wanted to inflict maximum suffering before death finally came. The brutality was so extreme that even hardened homicide detectives struggled to process the crime scene. But Pike's evil didn't end with murder. In an act that defied comprehension, she carved a pentagram into Slemmer's chest and kept a piece of the victim's skull as a trophy. The occult symbolism and trophy-taken behavior demonstrated a level of depravity that prosecutors had never encountered in such a young defendant. Pike's involvement in satanic practices added another disturbing dimension to the case. Her fascination with dark rituals and occult symbolism had influenced the torture murder, turning Slemmer's death into a ritualistic killing that shocked Tennessee's legal system. When police arrested Pike, they discovered the piece of Slemmer's skull in her possession, physical evidence of her participation in one of the state's most heinous crimes. Her confession revealed the full extent of the torture and her role as the primary perpetrator. Tennessee prosecutors sought the death penalty, and Pike became the youngest woman sentenced to death in the United States. Case 5. Carly Gregg. In 2024, 14-year-old Carly Gregg shocked Mississippi when she committed the ultimate family betrayal, murdering her own mother and attempting to kill her stepfather in their family home. Her case became one of the most recent examples of teenage girls capable of extreme family violence. Gregg was living what appeared to be a typical teenage life in Brandon, Mississippi, with her mother and stepfather. On the surface, the family seemed functional, but beneath the facade, tensions were building that would soon explode into deadly violence. The specific triggers that led to the murders remain part of the ongoing legal proceedings, but the results were undeniably tragic. On the day that would destroy her family forever, Gregg made a decision that defied every natural bond between mother and child. While in their family home, the place that should have been the safest space for both of them, she turned on the woman who had given her life and raised her. The murder of her mother wasn't a crime of passion or a moment of teenage rebellion that went too far. Evidence suggested premeditation and planning, making the crime even more disturbing to prosecutors and the community. Greg had deliberately chosen to end her mother's life, violating the most fundamental relationship in human society. But Greg's violence didn't stop with matricide. When her stepfather returned home, she attempted to kill him as well, trying to complete the destruction of her family unit. Only his survival prevented the case from becoming a double homicide that would have left Greg as the sole survivor of her own family massacre. The attempted murder of her stepfather revealed the extent of Greg's violent intentions. This wasn't a single moment of rage directed at one family member. It was a systematic attempt to eliminate her entire family structure. The planning required for such an attack demonstrated a level of criminal sophistication that prosecutors argued transcended her youth. After the attacks, Greg's behavior showed a disturbing lack of remorse or understanding of the magnitude of her crimes. Her actions in the immediate aftermath of the murders provided prosecutors with additional evidence of her callousness and helped build their case for adult charges. Mississippi courts showed no mercy for the teenage family killer. Despite her age, Greg was sentenced to life imprisonment, joining the ranks of America's youngest female killers condemned to spend their lives behind bars. The state had decided that murdering one's own mother represented such a fundamental violation of human decency that age couldn't excuse the crime. Greg had destroyed her family and sealed her own fate with acts of violence that shocked even experienced prosecutors. Case 6. Rachel Wade. In 2009, 19-year-old Rachel Wade proved that teenage love triangles could turn deadly when she stabbed her romantic rival Sarah Ludeman to death in Pinellas Park, Florida. While technically an adult at the time of her crime, Wade's case is often cited in discussions of teenage killers due to the adolescent nature of the conflict that led to murder. The deadly triangle began when Wade and Ludeman found themselves competing for the affections of the same young man. What should have been typical teenage drama escalated into a bitter feud that played out across social media, text messages, and face-to-face confrontations. The digital age had given their conflict a new dimension, with threats and insults exchanged through technology. Wade's jealousy consumed her as she watched Ludeman's relationship with their shared romantic interest develop. Text messages recovered by police revealed the escalating nature of their conflict, with both girls exchanging increasingly violent threats. The digital evidence would later prove crucial in establishing Wade's state of mind leading up to the murder. The threats weren't empty teenage posturing. They were genuine promises of violence that Wade fully intended to keep. Her messages to Ludeman included explicit descriptions of what she planned to do, creating a digital trail that prosecutors would use to prove premeditation. The technology that facilitated their conflict also documented Wade's journey toward murder. On April 15, 2009, the online feud became deadly reality when Wade and Ludeman met for a final confrontation. What began as another argument between teenage rivals ended when Wade pulled out a knife and stabbed Ludeman in the heart. The 18-year-old victim died at the scene, killed over a romantic rivalry that had spiraled completely out of control. Wade's claim of self-defense crumbled under scrutiny when investigators examined the evidence. The positioning of the wound, witness testimony, and the digital trail of threats all pointed to premeditated murder rather than defensive action. Wade had brought a knife to what she knew would be a confrontation, suggesting she had planned for violence. The trial revealed the full extent of the toxic relationship between the two teenagers and how social media had amplified their conflict. Prosecutors argued that Wade had deliberately escalated the situation and planned Ludeman's murder, while the defense tried to portray the killing as a tragic accident during a heated argument. Florida courts rejected Wade's self-defense claims and sentenced her to 27 years in prison for second-degree murder. While not technically a life sentence, the lengthy term ensured that Wade would spend the prime years of her life behind bars for a crime that began with teenage jealousy and ended with deadly violence. Case 7. Scarlett Jenkinson. While our focus has been on American teenage girl killers, the 2023 case of Scarlett Jenkinson in Manchester, England, deserves mention for its shocking brutality and international implications. At 16, Jenkinson participated in the murder of transgender schoolgirl Brianna Gay, creating a case that horrified both the UK and the global community. Jenkinson's crime occurred in Culcheth Linear Park in Warrington, where she and her co-defendant Eddie Ratcliffe lured 16-year-old Brianna Gay for what the victim believed would be a friendly meeting. Instead, Brianna walked into a trap that would cost her life and shock the international community with its calculated cruelty. The murder wasn't a spontaneous act of violence, but a planned attack that Jenkinson and Ratcliffe had discussed and prepared for in advance. Evidence revealed that the teenagers had researched methods of killing and had specifically targeted Brianna, making the crime particularly heinous in the eyes of British prosecutors. Brianna Gay's identity as a transgender teenager added another layer of horror to the case, raising questions about whether her murder was motivated by hate and prejudice. The victim had been living openly as a transgender girl, and her death became a symbol of the violence faced by transgender youth worldwide. The investigation revealed disturbing details about Jenkinson's mindset and her fascination with violence and torture. Like several of the American cases we've examined, Jenkinson showed an interest in inflicting pain and suffering that went far beyond typical teenage behavior. Her digital footprint revealed a dangerous obsession with violence that culminated in murder. British courts treated the case with the severity it deserved, sentencing Jenkinson to life imprisonment, with the possibility of parole after 22 years. The sentence reflected the UK's approach to juvenile life sentences, which differs from the American system, but still recognizes that some teenage crimes warrant decades behind bars. The international attention surrounding Brianna Gay's murder highlighted the global nature of violence against transgender individuals and the particular vulnerability of transgender youth. Jenkinson's case became part of a broader conversation about hate crimes, teenage violence, and the protection of marginalized communities. While Jenkinson's crime occurred outside the United States, her case demonstrates that the capacity for extreme violence among teenage girls isn't limited to American society. The international nature of her crime shows that the dark patterns we've examined in American cases exist across cultures and legal systems. The murder of Brianna Gay serves as a reminder that teenage girl killers can emerge anywhere, challenging assumptions about youth, gender, and violence on a global scale. The 7 cases we've examined reveal disturbing patterns that challenge fundamental assumptions about female violence, teenage crime, and the intersection of youth and gender in criminal behavior. These patterns expose uncomfortable truths about the capacity for evil among America's youngest female offenders. The most striking pattern among these cases is the prevalence of family murder. 4 of our 7 killers, Kristen Pittman, Ashley Jones, Carly Gregg, and even Alyssa Bustamante, who killed a neighbor child, targeted victims within their immediate social circles. This contradicts the stereotype of stranger danger and reveals that teenage girls are most likely to kill people they know intimately. Family murders carry special psychological weight because they represent the ultimate betrayal of trust. Grandparents who opened their homes to troubled granddaughters, mothers who sacrificed for their children. These victims died at the hands of the very people they were trying to help. The violation of family bonds makes these crimes particularly heinous in the eyes of prosecutors and juries. Despite their youth, these killers demonstrated remarkable levels of planning and premeditation. Alyssa Bustamante's diary entries, Rachel Wade's threatening text messages, and the evidence of planning in multiple cases destroy the myth that teenage violence is purely impulsive. These girls thought about murder, planned their attacks, and executed their victims with adult-level criminal sophistication. The youngest killer, 12-year-old Kristen Pittman, proves that extreme premeditation can exist even in elementary school-aged children. Her case forces us to confront the reality that some children are capable of adult-level criminal thinking at ages we associate with innocence and dependency. These cases span multiple states and socioeconomic backgrounds, proving that teenage girl killers aren't limited to specific regions or social classes. From Missouri to Mississippi, from Alabama to Florida, these crimes occurred across diverse communities, suggesting that the capacity for extreme violence among teenage girls exists throughout American society. Unlike adult female killers who often target intimate partners or use poison, these teenage girls employed direct violence, stabbing, beating, and shooting their victims. Their methods were brutal and personal, contradicting stereotypes about how females commit murder. Several cases involved social media and digital communication as catalysts or documentation tools. Rachel Wade's threatening texts and Alyssa Bustamante's online posts show how technology has created new ways for teenage killers to document their intentions and escalate conflicts. 7 teenage girls. 7 life sentences. 7 cases that shattered every comfortable assumption about youth, gender, and the capacity for evil. These weren't troubled children who made tragic mistakes. They were cold-blooded killers who planned and executed murders with adult-level criminal sophistication. Today, these killers remain behind bars across America's prison system. Kristen Pittman, now in her 30s, continues serving her sentence for murdering her grandparents at age 12. Ashley Jones will never see freedom again, condemned to die in prison for destroying her own family. Alyssa Bustamante remains incarcerated for the thrill killing that satisfied her curiosity about murder. Krista Pike sits on Tennessee's death row as the youngest woman ever sentenced to execution in modern America, her case still winding through appeals decades after she tortured Colleen Slimmer to death. Carly Gregg begins what will likely be a lifetime behind bars for matricide. Rachel Wade serves her 27-year sentence for stabbing her romantic rival to death over a teenage love triangle. These cases forced America's justice system to confront uncomfortable questions that remain relevant today. Should a 12-year-old spend decades in prison? Can teenage girls be as dangerous as adult killers? Do youth and gender provide any protection from life sentences when the crimes are this extreme? The victims' families continue to live with the devastating consequences of these murders. Parents who lost children, families destroyed by their own members, communities shattered by violence they never thought possible from teenage girls. Their pain serves as a permanent reminder that behind every shocking headline are real people whose lives were forever changed by these acts of evil. What makes these cases particularly disturbing is how they challenge our most basic assumptions about protection and safety. We expect to be safe from our own family members, safe from children, safe from teenage girls who society views as less threatening than their male counterparts. These 7 killers proved that evil recognizes no boundaries of age or gender. The debate over how to handle such extreme juvenile offenders continues. Should the justice system focus on punishment or rehabilitation? Can someone who commits murder as a child ever be safely released into society? Do these cases represent failures of the system to identify and help troubled youth before they kill? What do you think? Should teenage girl killers face the same consequences as adult murderers, or does their age warrant different treatment? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for more shocking examinations of America's most disturbing criminal cases.